Thomas Hale left his wife and children and moved north. He took a new name. He called himself Adrian Moore. He found work as a handyman at Greyhaven Manor. Greyhaven sat back from the road, behind an iron gate. The house had tall windows and older rooms. People said money lived behind every wall. Adelaide Hargrove caught Adrian's eye like a face in a cold window. She was married to Samuel Hargrove. The Hargroves belonged to the town's good lists. Adrian and Adelaide began to meet in small ways. She sent notes. He left tools by her door. They laughed at things no one else heard. Their love became a private world. It made light in the old house. It also made a plan. They decided they could not keep loving under Samuel's shadow. They thought leaving him was simple. They tried once with poison. They bought arsenic at a shop by the river. A cup of tea, a silent spoon. The attempt failed. Samuel fell ill. He recovered, coughing, and suspicions circled the manor like smoke. After that, the plan sharpened. Adrian bought a rifle from a traveling merchant. He practiced behind the servants' quarters. On a windy May night, he followed Samuel up the lane. He raised the rifle. He pulled the trigger. Samuel Hargrove was found on the path the next morning. He lay with his face to the sky. The town woke in pieces. Talk turned to gossip. People who had smiled before now whispered. Adrian and Adelaide tried to hide what they had done. They buried the rifle in the marsh. They tried to wipe the footprints away. Small things turned into evidence. A tradesman remembered selling arsenic. A hotel keeper had seen them together. Neighbors recalled a hurried voice on the path that night. The sheriff arrested Adrian. At first, he confessed. He told the court where the rifle lay in the reeds. He said he had meant to protect Adelaide by removing the man who held her house and her name. For a moment, he believed if she were found guilty too, the Hargrove family influence would bend the law. He hoped for mercy. His lawyer and the prosecutor shut that down. They told him nothing he said against Adelaide would change his fate. Adrian took his words back on the stand. He pleaded that love had been a mistake, that no one else had forced him. The town papers printed the trial in full. Reporters liked a clear villain. They wrote about Adrian's broken voice when he remembered Samuel's eyes. They wrote about the rifle hauled from the marsh. Witnesses spoke. The gardener said Adrian had warned of prowlers. The shopkeeper swore he'd sold arsenic. The merchant confirmed the rifle sale. Hotel logs were read. A maid had seen Adrian and Adelaide close in moonlight. But it was Adrian's confessions, admitted despite the defense, that carried weight. The jury did not take long. 15 minutes is a small measure in a life. They called him guilty. Adelaide's trial followed. Prosecutors wanted Adrian to testify. There was debate over whether a convicted man, not yet sentenced, could speak in another's defense. The judge refused. The prosecution rested. Without leaving their seats, the jurors returned with a verdict of not guilty. Greyhaven's family ties ran deep. The town's better circles had closed around one of their own. Adelaide left the courthouse pale and hollow. She was free in law. She was not free in anything that mattered. She walked the manor but did not sleep. Guests saw her at the window, watching the road until dawn. People said she put on the same dresses and made no new friends. Adrian watched both trials from his cell. He thought of the wife and the children he had left behind. He pictured their faces in the window of a house miles away. He had thought a promise could change the world. Instead, it had cost everything. Years passed. The town moved on in ordinary ways, but Greyhaven stayed where it was. Visitors came with lanterns and curiosity. They whisper about rooms that remember. They say a pale man walks the bottom hall with the look of someone who left his life for one moment of love. He does not strike, he only looks. His face holds an anger that does not burn, but stays. They say a second figure waits where the scaffold once stood outside town. He wears the same coat he had on the day the sentence took him. He paces the patch of earth where the gallows used to be. People have found a mud-slick print and a scrap of linen on winter mornings. Imagine meeting your old life and your new one again and again after you die. Imagine seeing the woman you loved walk the parlors you once cleaned. Imagine hearing the slow footfall of the man who took your life and knowing you set the wheel that keeps him moving. That is what the townsfolk say. They tell the story in doorways and at market stalls. It is a small, terrible comfort that the house remembers them both. If you stand in Greyhaven's lower hall at dusk, they say the cold will come first. Then the feeling, a presence that wants to speak. It does not forgive. It does not forget. Many leave with wet hands and quiet mouths. They carry the story like a stone in their coat. In that way, the three of them stay together, over and over.
Mara Lyons was ordinary in all the ways that counted. She worked nights at a diner. She dreamed of leaving. She did not expect a soldier to appear in a rainstorm. Owen Hale arrived like a mistake from a different life. He looked tired in a way years could not make. He said he came from the future. Mara did not laugh. Not then. The city had a long habit of swallowing people alive. Owen told her the truth in a small room over a garage. He spoke in clipped sentences. He said a machine would come. It would try to kill her before a child she had not yet met could grow up. She listened because the fear in his voice matched the fear in her chest. They had nothing else to test it with. They had time and a decision. They hid. They learned each other in fits and starts. Owen taught her how to use a gun. Mara taught him jokes for mornings. They walked empty streets and shared coffee until dawn. Love began like a small rebellion. It began like heat in cold weather. They found each other the way two people find a hand in the dark. But the city was honest about danger. Something came looking for Mara. At first, it was a single sound, a thud on a ceiling, heavy and wrong. Then a shadow in the alley that should not have moved like a man. Neighbors said it was a prowler. Owen said it was worse. The hunter arrived under ordinary weather. It looked like a man. It moved like a machine. Its face could mimic a smile. Its hands did not tremble. When it failed to be human, something animal showed through. They ran. They led the hunter through alleys and abandoned lots. They tried to lose it in crowds. They watched the thing strip away what made it human. The skin it wore peeled in a rain of hair and makeup. Underneath, there was metal and gears and a patient hunger. They reached the factory at the river because factories remember how to hide people. The factory was a skeleton of machines and rust. It smelled like oil in old fires. Inside, silence has weight. They moved low between the presses. Mara could hear her own breath. Owen kept a hand on her shoulder like a promise. The hunter stalked them under the high roof, its sensors clicking quietly. It adapted to every trick. When Mara thought she had lost it, it would appear at the next shadow, the next stare. It was there, in a room of cold machines, that Owen decided to make the choice he had been carrying across years. He looked at Mara like a man who had finally finished a long journey and had nothing left to trade. He said, "You have to live." She said his name like a prayer. He kissed her, quick and hard, then turned away. He said he would hold the hunter at the line. He said he would make sure she got out. She had learned to read the future in his hands. She knew then that a man who comes from tomorrow can still have a past. Owen set a trap with slow, quiet hands. He led the hunter past stacks of metal, down catwalks and into the belly of the plant. He jammed the presses and opened the covers where gears bit and ground. The factory sang again, a deadly hymn. Metal screamed. Sparks flew like small stars. Mara ran to the side exit the way a person runs from a storm. She kept thinking of a child she had not yet met. She thought of small things, names, songs, a single winter coat. Behind her, the factory changed the sound of the world. Owen moved with a calm that came from giving up everything all at once. He slowed the hunter with cables and oil and a prayer he did not say aloud. The machine fought with the strength of a thing that had no reason to stop. There was a final sound, a sound like falling metal and a man's last breath. The hunter failed to leave. Owen did not walk out. Mara stumbled out into the cold and found night waiting like a person who had grown accustomed to losses. She did not look back until the sirens came. When she did, the factory glowed with a pale, angry light. The police found parts and ash and the shape of decisions. Owen's name was not the one recorded in any report. They called him a man unknown, a soldier out of time. But Mara held the rest in the quiet that follows everything. She held his last words folded into the fabric of her life. Weeks later, the thing that had come from metal returned in stories. People said they felt watched at the river. Children whispered about a face in the dock lights. Mara paid no mind to gossip. Her nights were for other work. She learned she was carrying a child in a way that did not feel like destiny, but like consequence. The test at the clinic was a small, certain thing. A low blue line. A life decided. There was fear. There was grief. There was also a strange, raw joy that comes from holding proof that someone lived so you could keep going. The town wrote about the factory for a while. They called it tragedy and then moved on. People forget quickly. Walls forget slower. Mara talked to the small shape growing inside her. She made promises in a voice that felt both cracked and steady. She told stories about a man who told the truth and about how the world can be ugly and also brave. Night came sometimes with a weight Mara could not name. She would stand at the window and feel the city as if it were a body. Sometimes she felt a tap at the glass, the press of a hand that was not there only for her. She could not know how much of Owen lived in the thing they had fought. She could only know the shape he left, a scar like a compass. When the child was born, she named him Elias, not because it was the only name, but because it felt like light. He put his small hand in hers like a new map. Mara felt the future shift, as if someone else had moved the furniture of the world. She kept the small things Owen had left behind. A coin without a face, a page of a map, a photograph that had not been taken yet. At night, in the clean hours, Mara would tell Elias about a man who came from a future full of storms. She would tell him about the factory and the machine, and about a choice that placed love against a terrible law. She did not pretend it was cruel. She did not pretend it was not a wound. But she taught Elias that courage can be a quiet thing. She taught him that sometimes a person must walk forward so the rest can live. Outside the city, the old plant still smelled faintly of oil. People say if you stand on the road and listen, you can hear gears turning in slow time. They say two shapes hump a place where decisions were made. One watches the bottom floor with an anger that does not burn. The other paces a patch of earth where a scaffold once tall stood, wearing the stain of a last coat.
Mara called it memory. She called it love. She called it what moved her to keep walking.
Eli Mercer turned the call up and stepped out of the Mercedes. No service out here, he thought. The road was too thin for a signal. The trees drank the light. "Eli, say the address again," Marcus croaked through the speaker. 6666 Chayne, South Lane, came the broken voice. Eli laughed because he had to. Right, 666 Chayne, South Lane. Classic. Marcus made a sound that was not a laugh. Eli teased him and hung up. He typed the route into his GPS and drove deeper into the hills. The village showed itself like a rumor. A stoplight, one store, a postbox with stickers curled at the edges. Eli passed a rusted mailbox with 3 numbers carved in the paint. 666. The driveway was a lane of weeds. The house sat small and flattened against the trees. It looked like the wind had decided to live there. He stepped out and locked the car. The grass scraped his shins. Something metal caught his eye. A trap, half buried. He swore and stepped around it. The front door protested when he knocked. Slow footsteps answered. The hinges screamed. The man who opened the door was enormous. He wore a canvas apron so worn it had its own shape. His nails were long and filthy. His head was shaved close. He did not smile. He did not blink. A hockey mask hid his face. Only gray eyes looked out from behind it. They were too still. Eli's training began before the words left his mouth. Smile, pitch, close. He launched into it, fast and bright. "Hi, Mr. Lang. I'm Eli Mercer with Luxor Investments. We help towns like Dryfield bring value to hidden gems. Your place sits on prime acreage. We buy, remodel, and flip. You could be set. Cabo next week if you like." The man did not answer. Eli kept speaking anyway. He moved through the house like a man on cue. Rooms had no furniture. Windows were bolted shut from the inside. Boards formed a ransom note across the glass. Eli joked about light and trends and Wagyu. He kept the voice that was practiced and empty. It worked in most houses. It did not work here. The kitchen smelled of old grease and rot. A sink held cloth and tangled things. A stove wore a crown of flies. Eli tried to laugh. The man did not move. They walked down a narrow hallway. Eli pointed out floors and value. The bedroom had handcuffs on the wall. Brown stains rimmed the floor like old maps. Eli forced a grin and kept talking. "This is original hardwood. Adds value, you know? People love it." The man's stare did not soften. Then the man produced keys. 5 locks on the last door. He moved to the basement like a priest leading a ceremony. Eli followed, thinking of numbers on a contract. A chain clanked. A bulb flared. Concrete and cold hit Eli's face. Bodies lay in a corner. A small heap of people made still. He stepped closer and felt his smile peel away. Dead, he thought. Not staged, not prop. Dead. Eli pinched his nose and looked at the floor. He had rehearsed for objections. He had not rehearsed for this. He went through the motions anyway. "This is unfinished. We can demo. We can..." His voice softened on the word demo. He imagined the zeros he could add. He imagined the beach Marcus always bragged about. Mr. Lang watched him sign with the slow, flat attention of a statue.
Eli traced the signature and felt a hollow under his ribs. He walked back to his car as the light thinned. The house looked smaller from the dirt road. Outside, he dialed Marcus when he was clear of the trees. Marcus answered quick. "Eli, service. Nice. So, how did it go?" "Smooth," Eli said, and then lied. He told the easy lie, the one about a man who'd never seen an iPad. He made jokes about boomers and clean interiors. He made Marcus laugh. Then Eli paused. He felt something like a memory, sharp and slow. A photo in a wallet gone missing. A laugh that belonged to someone he used to know. Once a woman had waited for him at a cheap flat in the city. She left him a note and a shirt on the chair. He learned to sell harder after that. He did not say this to Marcus. Instead, he said, "I saw my future, Marcus. I'm cleaning my place when I get back. Deep clean. Marie Kondo, the whole life." Marcus snorted. "Perfect. Another $1 million for the firm, huh?" "Yep," Eli said. "We made a killing." He let the call drop and drove home. The road unrolled like any other. He kept thinking about the basement. He kept thinking about faces without names. At night, he washed the day from his hands and set his phone face down. He told himself the paperwork would take care of names and coroner reports. He told himself someone else would hold the image of bodies so he could keep the shape of his life. Sleep came thin. He dreamed of a mask with eyes that watched him cross a bridge. He woke with a taste of metal in his mouth and the sense that something had been left behind. Days later, the papers in the city ran a line about a suspicious property. They wrote small words about bodies found and arrests pending. Eli read it over a coffee, like a man who reads about storms that happen to other people. He put the article in a folder and said nothing. He told Marcus the sale was complete. He told him the zeros had been added. He told himself he had done what he had always done. He told no one about the weight in the basement of his chest. Sometimes he waited for a knock at his door. He expected no one. Sometimes he imagined the man behind the mask standing at the edge of the trees, a strange, patient thing that did not demand justice. It only watched. Eli kept the joke about cleaning for days. He cleaned his apartment until the floors shone. He folded shirts until the creases looked straight. Still, at night, he would find himself staring at closed windows. He would imagine someone else, somewhere, with hands that once belonged to the dead. He had sold a house for money. He had not sold away the memory. Whenever Marcus called to celebrate, Eli laughed and told the same lie. He told it in a voice practiced for lightness. He kept the darker thing folded and private. It lived in the hollow, the way the house lived in the lane. It waited.